Hey everybody, Kyle Sasser here, and it's everybody's favorite time of the month. That's right, real estate market statistics time. These real estate market stats are for the Dayton Metro area for November 2025. So if you're a longtime watcher of the channel, you will notice that we've had a little bit of a gap since the last video. I think the last one that we did was in September, maybe August. So yeah, it's been a little bit since I've released a video. I've definitely still been doing real estate, but what happened is basically to compile these reports every month, it takes 3 or 4 different systems kind of working together, you know, from gathering the statistics to putting them into a, like tables so that they can be retrieved, and then generating the report, and then finally generating this video. And basically everything except for generating the video broke. The service providers basically changed the level of API calls that they were okay with letting me use. And if you've seen these reports, you know that there is hundreds, maybe there's at least hundreds, maybe a couple thousand of individual records that need to be pulled to compile these reports. And they've limited it to maybe about 20. So it took me a little bit of time to put the reports back together, and you will see they are kind of bare bones compared to normal. But the important bits, which are the information tables and the charts and historic data, all of that is here. And then over the next, 3-4 weeks, now that we have the framework complete, I'm going to work on putting the pretty stuff back in to make the report more presentable. For those of you that this is the first time you're watching, you probably don't care about any of that. You just want the numbers. So, so let's dive on in. So the thing to remember with these stats is we are comparing year to year. We are comparing October 2025 to October 2024. The reason we do that is because the natural calendar year has a ebb and flow that follows the seasons as well as the school year primarily. So things through wintertime tends to slow down, and also start and end of school things get a little weird. So if you're comparing month to month, there are months that will always naturally have a lot more activity simply because there's not these other things going on. So we are comparing October 2025 to October 2024. The additional thing to remember is also there was a hurricane last year, so all of these numbers are going to be off a little bit. Additionally, we look at an entire month and compare that, because if we do week to week, a week can be significantly affected if there is like a holiday that moves around, or if there's just a particular bad stretch of weather, even in addition to hurricanes. If it's just kind of a little bit more rainy one week, that puts a damper on a lot of things. So a month is kind of the smallest digestible size that is applicable for real estate. And the good news is real estate is always moving, but it usually doesn't move too fast. So compiling numbers monthly and then comparing year to year with a little bit of an eye on what's happening month to month, that usually gives us the clearest picture of what's happening in the real estate market. Now, if you remember back to your math class in school, you'll remember average and median, which is part of mean, median, and mode. So mean and average are kind of the same thing. Everybody kind of knows how that goes. Let's say you have 5 houses. You add up the prices that those houses sold at, that is the average. And then divide it by the number of houses, that is an average. Median sales price is a little different though. With median sales price, if you have, say, 100 houses, the median price would be the point at which, the price at which there's an equal number of higher priced houses and lower priced houses. The median sales price does not tend to move around as much, and also it is not as effective if there is a large number of very low or very expensive, or a couple very expensive houses. If your local football quarterback professional decides to sell his house, that can move the average sales price significantly more than median, where it's just kind of another data point. And also, since total number of sales is a little lower than it has been historically, the average tends to move around pretty significantly, and the median has been moving around a little bit more than usual, but it's kind of the best metric we have. So I always pay a little bit more attention to the median sales price. So the story for the last few years with the Dayton Metro area is basically prices have been steadily marching upwards. Not in huge leaps necessarily, just a very steady general upward trend, about 3 to 6% year over year, and that trend continues. But let's dive into these stats here. So number of closed sales was up 5.63% from 1,120 to 1,183 homes sold. Median sales price was up 4.17% from $240,000 to $250,000. Average sales price was up 2.22% from $275,694 to $281,818. Median percent of original list price was down 0.21% from 97.5 to 97.3. And median time to contract is down 28.57% to 35 days. Total number of new listings was up 2.47% to 1,496. While active inventory was up 21.24% from 1,864 to 2,260. Foreclosures and short sales, or the doom and gloom section as I like to call it, there was a total of 5 foreclosures and 0 short sales, so still not a lot of activity on that side of the market. Now, I do like to look at break some of this down by the price points, because a $1 million house does tend to sell for a little bit different time frames than a $300,000 house. The reason being is there's simply more buyers in the $300,000 price category. I also try not to read every one of these because it gets a little monotonous. I'm sure you don't want to listen to all those. If you want the full report, there is a link in the description down below to where you can see the full report. So this is closed sales by price. Now, 150,000 and less, there have been fewer sales in that price category. The primary reason why is most of the houses that were in that price category have moved up to a higher price point. We'll see that in one of the subsequent charts here. But for example, 100 to 150,000 was down 21.68% to 112. 150,000 to 200,000 was up 15.43% though to 202. 200 to 250,000 was up 26.62% to 195. 250 to 300,000 was up 15.33% to 173. Jump ahead a little bit. 400 to 600 was up 16.2% to 165 closed sales, and a million or more was up 33% to 8. So if we look at the number of new listings though, we can see why there are fewer closed sales in those lower price categories. So under 50,000 was down 38.7% to 19. 50 to 100,000 was down 27% to 75. 100 to 150,000 was down 22% to 140. Then we get to 200 to 250, that was up 22.65% new listings, total of 222. 250 to 300 held pretty steady, only a 0.89% increase to 226. 300 to 400,000 was down 4.47%, 235, and then 400 to 600 was up 50.94% to 240. So that's for the meat of the market. The meat of the market is 150 to 600,000. And then if we look at total inventory, is up pretty much across the board. The only one that was down is the 100 to 150 mark. That was down 6.06% to 217. But like the 200 to 250,000, there's 38.65% more homes for sale. Total of 287. 250 to 300,000 was up 23.87 to 301. 300,000 to 400,000 was up 29.73% to 384. So as you can see, there's more homes to choose from if you're in the market to purchase currently. So those are the statistics for the Dayton Metro area. Now, what sort of analysis can we pull out of these numbers and this information? Well, basically the overall trend that has been happening for the last few years, which is that steady price increase in the Dayton Metro area, that is continuing. And there's nothing in here to indicate that there's any shift happening with that. So, time to contract, time to sale, that has shortened up a pretty good amount. And the number of homes for sale, while yes, there are more of them for sale, the thing is there are still enough homes selling that those homes that were burning through that inventory fast enough that sellers are not feeling overly stressed to need to drop the prices to sell their house. One change is that the median percent of original list price has dropped, so that's kind of come down. It was 100% a few months ago. So that has come down. So that is one change, but that's what we call a leading indicator. That one is kind of the first one that has to move before median sales price drops. But there's like 2 or 3 other things that you would usually see in the numbers before a true median sales price reduction. So normally it is percent of original list price starts to drop. That means that sellers are not getting their initial asking price, which is, again, that's how a normal market is. It's unusual for every seller to get their asking price. So percent of original list price starts to drop. And then the other one that starts to move is the median time to contract, median time to sell. That would start getting longer if we are seeing a median sales price reduction shaping up. But again, median time to contract has shortened, which is the opposite of what would usually indicate a price reduction. But still some good news. Interest rates, I have seen some people get into the 5s for conventional loans. That's something that's been kind of unheard of for the last couple years. And then also on the buying side, there are more houses to choose from than there have been in the preceding years. So you don't have to make compromises so far as like home conditions. You can kind of be a little bit more picky and choosy about the location and the quality of the home. That is some good news and some improvements in the market. But everyone kind of forgets that getting 4 or 5 or 10 offers on a house and prices going like $30,000 above asking price, that is not how a normal real estate market works. And so, you can't really use that as a baseline comparison, because compared to that, yeah, any real estate market is going to look pretty bad, but it's unsustainable. So this is kind of more of a normal, just real estate market, a slow but steady increase in median home price. So thank you so much for tuning in to these real estate market statistics for the Dayton Metro area. My name is Kyle Sasser. If you would like help finding your own home in the Dayton Metro area, I would love to help you out. You can reach me at 937-907-6777. There's also a link to my calendar in the description down below. You can click on that. It'll take you to the calendar, and you can choose the time that works best for you to have a chat. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Kyle Sasser, and I'll talk to you soon.